Hello everyone and welcome to this here Blender tutorial that I'm going to do today. So this is going to be a beginner tutorial, and we're going to kind of have an overview of the whole Blender software, because we're just going to be jumping back and forth between a bunch of different environments and different little skills, and just getting kind of a look at them as we make something that I think is pretty cool. As you see, it'll look something like this. I made this one a couple of days ago. And we're going to be creating this sort of thing. So included in this tutorial are looks at basically just adding objects and working with those, edit mode, with a little bit of sculpting, very basic, some shading, a little bit, and then compositing as well, with like distance passes and things like that. And that'll include a little bit of notes. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, don't worry. We'll be going into it. If you do know what I'm talking about and you're more of a, not a beginner user, you know what's going on in the software, you can kind of jump to this timestamp right here, and it'll just be me giving an overview of everything that we did in the tutorial, and you should probably be able to figure out how to do it from there. So without any further ado, let's jump in. So we're making this here image today, and I think it's pretty cool. It's very simple, minimalistic. It's like your background or whatever. Okay, so this is the general 3D viewport that you'll first get greeted with once you open up Blender. Now, basically, you hold middle mouse button down to kind of do an orbit thing with your viewport. If you want to, kind of pan the viewport side to side, you hold down Shift middle mouse button, and then to zoom in, it's just scroll wheel or Control middle mouse button, move up and down. That's if you don't have a scroll wheel like me, because you're using a pen. Some pens do have them. Those are fancy ones. Well, now what we have in this scene is a light. That's what this thing is, a cube, obviously. And then this little doodad represents our camera. Well, we don't need any of this stuff right now, so let's go ahead and do the Blender traditional thing of pressing A to select everything and going delete. It's all gone, all clear. Now you also can, you can see that everything I'm typing is being highlighted in this little corner down here, so you have a little idea of what kind of keyboard shortcuts I'm using. I am going to just quickly... Oh, nope, that is not what I wanted to do. What else is new? Anyway, I'm going to open up an image editor, and I am going to go ahead and quickly open up that image that we were talking about earlier, just so we don't forget what it looks like. There we go. So this is what we're making today. And how are we going to do this? Well, you could put all of these trees here, but we're going to use what's called a particle system to make the trees like hair. Now, obviously they don't look like hair, but if you just imagine that each one of these trees is a single strand of hair, you'll kind of understand how it works. But in order to make hair, we have to have something that we put the hair onto. So we're going to do that by pressing Shift A to add something new. And I am going to go ahead and... yeah, I'll go with a plane for this one. I did something a little bit different over here, but we won't get into that complicated. And I don't even think it actually changed the result. So now we're going to go ahead. We're in object mode right now, right? But we are now going to go into edit mode by pressing tab on the number pad. Now, instead of selecting the object, we're able to select the individual vertices, the individual edges, or the faces themselves. Now, there's only one face, 4 edges, 4 vertices here, which is not too interesting, but we can do a little cool stuff here. Basically, the way that this is kind of structured is it's like 3-tiered. You have this first base tier, and then this second medium tier, and then this far tier, and then, the background. So we're going to do that by basically having 3 layers of trees, right? So we'll have one plane here, one plane here, one plane here. And now they're not going to be square, they're going to be kind of rectangular. So in order to do that, I am going to basically go back to vertex mode, select everything, scale along the x-axis until it gets to a point that I think is kind of good. And then scale on the y-axis as well. just pressing S and then X to constrain the X-axis or Y to constrain the Y-axis. If you're ever confused, you can kind of look down here and it shows. Now we have this, but basically the way that the particle emitter works is it looks for either faces or vertices to spawn from. And right now we have 4 vertices. So what's going to happen is you're just going to have them all clustered along the middle, unless you do other fancy things that we're not going to go into. So we need to subdivide this. For all of you math people out there, you're kind of aware of how this works. So we're going to do a little right click and then click subdivide. And now in the subdivide menu, which you can just get to by expanding this thing, we're just going to just increase this by a lot. Maybe not 50, 30, 40. There we go. Now I'm going to click tab to go out of edit mode. And that's really all we need to do in edit mode. But, you know, now in here I can do things with the vertices. I can delete vertices. I can grab things, move them around. But we don't really need to do that for this. This is pretty simple. Now, one thing you may notice, though, is that there's a little bit of a curve going on. How do we get that? Well, we're going to get that with our good old friend, Sculpt mode. Now, you could go over to the Sculpting menu here, up in the top, and you get a bunch of, basically lots of things change. But I don't want to leave this here friend of ours, so instead I'm just going to go up to this drop-down menu and go to Sculpt mode. Now we're in the fun stuff here. So you see we have X symmetry turned on, meaning, oh, and I forgot to mention, red is X-axis, green is Y-axis, and then blue, which is not displayed right now, but it goes that way, is the Z-axis. It's a standard 3-axis right-handed coordinate system. Some other programs, I guess the standard for VFX is that the Y-axis is up and that Z is depth, but I really don't like that, so I just kind of don't use it. I might later on, but not right now. So what we're going to do in Sculpt mode is you see we have a little bit of a different cursor. And you'll notice if we start doing stuff, whoa, it's very different. Basically, we're sculpting this right now, just kind of like clay, exactly like clay. So what we could do is to build up that curve is just really just pump that in, But we start to, basically it looks bad. It looks pretty bad. So instead what I'm going to do, basically I want to taco this. I want to grab it and pull it up. Well, good thing that there's a little thing called a grab brush. Now, how do we get to that? You could use the keyboard shortcut, but if you're new, you probably don't know that. And to be honest, I don't actually know it either. So what we're going to do is press T to get to, whoa, look at all these brushes. Well, basically, we're just going to find the one that is the grab brush. Boom, nailed it, first try. That doesn't happen very often. So what the grab brush is going to do is allow us to pull things up and down, right? And it goes a little like this way as well, but we're just going to use it off the normal. So just grab it and taco it up, right? But you see this radius is kind of small. We don't really want that. It'd take a while to get it right. So instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to press F and make the radius of the brush pretty big. And now you can see it's a lot better. So when we start pulling it up, it's a little bit better. It's a little smoother. The fall off is nice. Basically, this is what we want, right? So I'm just going to go through and pull up the sides, and you see because of that symmetry mode up here on like x-axis symmetry, whatever I do to this side is also being done to the other side and vice versa. So that's helpful. I'm a big fan of symmetry, as I think everyone should be. Just going, this doesn't have to be very accurate or good. Trust me, it definitely is not for me, but I'm just trying to get it to this nice sort of this very deep parabola sort of shape here. There are other ways to do this, but I figure this one is nice because we get to hang out in the sculpting space, and I don't get to do that very often, so I take any opportunity I can to. Okay, I started doing something dumb there, so we're just not going to do that. Now, this looks pretty okay, and we can always come back here and modify it later if we want, but I think that's good for now. So I'm going to go back up here to object mode, or you can just do Control Tab and then select object mode. That's the one I prefer. But so we have this kind of thing right here, and this it's not bad. I mean, it's not great. It doesn't look good, but it's definitely something. Next, I kind of want to orient our camera just so we have a little bit of an idea of where everything's stacking up. So there's no camera in the scene. We only have this plane. So I'm just going to press Shift A and then add a new camera. And you know where to go? It's down there. So basically, I just want to clear its location and rotation. So I'm just going to do that with Alt G for location and Alt R for rotation. Perfect. But obviously we don't want it pointing straight down on the ground. So I'm just going to press that. And I'm going to press H to hide just so we can see the camera better. What I'm going to do is rotate it along the x-axis 90 degrees, right? Just so it's pointing in the right direction. Perfect. And now I'm going to press G, constrain to Y. It's just like with scale that we were using earlier, where you would press X or Y to constrain it to X, Y, or Z to constrain it to Z. Grab for G and rotate with R work very similarly. Just going to close that. I don't need that. Now, if you want to see what the camera is seeing, you're going to go ahead to go over to your number pad and you're going to press 0. Now, it doesn't, you know, we're not actually getting anything because there's nothing there because we hid the plane. Click that little I or Alt H to unhide everything, or click that I to unhide that one thing. But look at that. Now we have something. You see the curve kind of resembles what's going on in the picture, but I kind of want to get basically the way that I got this kind of look of everything being kind of compressed with the background in the foreground is you have to use a really long lens. So I think with that one, I use like a 200mm lens equivalent because the cameras act like physically based as what a real camera would be. So what we're going to do is basically make it a long lens. So the default for a camera, unless you change it, is 50mm. And because, you know, it's pretty good. That's about what most people's eyes see at, roughly equivalent. Let's see. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this little paint bucket, and I'm going to, actually, you know what? Nah. I'm just going to open up a new panel by going to the corner and dragging. That way we still get our friend here, the image editor, and we still get the properties. But, or that's not the properties, that's the, you know, the thing, the outliner. Now we're going to go to the properties. There we go. That's what I meant to say. And we're going to go to the camera settings. Now you have to, where are the camera settings? You say, well, not that, that's the render settings. It's kind of confusing because that's the back of a camera, but we're looking for more of like what looks like a film camera. Well, to get that, you have to have the camera selected. So if you basically just kind of boop, and right click on it and then go back down to this film camera thing. Now you see we got all of this stuff. And basically you see how that acts like we're just zooming in and zooming out in a different way than just moving the camera, by the way. So we're just going to go ahead and make this 200mm because I think that's very cool. Now I'm going to, you see it got much longer, which, you know, that represents kind of the focal looks of where it's going. I forgot the word for it. So I'm just going to press GY and just move it back until I think it's close. Then press 0 to go back, and boy, it's still not totally close. Now what we could do is just scale this down, but I don't know. Hold on, let's press N to go to this thing, this little outliner property thing. Let's see, how big is this? It's not very big. If you're from the United States and you're new to the metric system like me, what you basically 1 meter is about 3 feet. It's easy conversion. It's not totally right, but it's close enough for most people. So now I just grabbed the camera and put it 76 meters away along the y-axis, and we got what we're looking for. The last thing I'm going to do is press a G and then Z, grab on the z-axis, and I'm just going to keep doing that until I get this kind of where I want the first trees to spawn. Now, basically, what we're going to do is, so you see our camera is kind of weird, like it's like the viewport is centered along this weird place, just in the middle of nowhere. Now what you could do is shift middle mouse button until you get to somewhere where you want, or you use the handy dandy press period on your number pad and it'll focus in on whatever object you're selected on. Nope, move out of the way immediately. Nice. So what we're going to do now is make that three-tiered structure. We're just going to press, to duplicate, you can press Control-C, Control-V, just like you would in any word processor or basically any program on Windows. But Blender has a nice, just quick way to do that, and that's pressing Shift-D for duplicate. Now, some of you out there might be saying, well, you could press Alt-D and just make an instance of it instead of duplicating. But nah, we're just gonna we're gonna make a full duplicate. So then I just moved it along the y-axis back, and basically what I'm going to do is scale it up a little bit with S, and then grab Z and move it up. Now if you go into your camera, I'm going to grab it a little bit more, and you can see that it's not, it's not looking great right now, but just bear with me. We'll get there. Let's press Shift D again, Y to grab it on the y-axis, scale it up a little bit. I'm going to additionally scale it up on the x-axis a little bit, just so it's a little shallower, because you can note that this is curvy, less curvy, almost flat. So you could also go ahead and do that with this one, but and let's grab it on the z-axis a little bit. And I'm going to just drag and select all of three of the planes, and I'm going to press a G, a Z, and grab them and move them down a little bit. So there we go. This is the basic scene. Now we're going to probably go in and mess around with this a little bit, but oh man, I spent this long and I didn't even save? Oh boy, you're going to press Control S to save, and I'm just going to save it right here. Trees. Saved. Now, what we are going to do is, of course, the thing that I just saved it as, the name, was trees. We don't have any trees yet. So, you could do this a couple ways. You could go online and download some trees from a place like Sketchfab. But, let's make our own. Because why not? You can notice all the trees in this image, they're really simple. They're just, it's like imagine if you took a cone and you just went boop, 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 boop. Basically, that's exactly what we're going to do to actually make the trees. This is just, I made that myself because it's not hard. Let's go ahead and make it, And then we're going to use that tree to be instanced across all of the planes as hair. So let's do that. I'm going to go ahead and click Scene Collection, right click and click New Collection. And I'm just going to name this one Trees, only with 2 E's. Name this one something, all right, so I'm just going to double click on that, and I'm going to rename it something cool like Scene Settings. Yep, very cool. Not used to typing like this, it's weird. So, once we click on trees, you notice there's this little checkbox next to both of these. I'm just going to uncheck Scene Settings. And now it's all gone. All gone. So, all you people out there, what do you think we need to do now to get a cone in here? Yep, that is absolutely right. Shift A, Mesh, Cone. Now, there are some settings that you can go with here. Like you can increase the vertice count, which makes it much smoother, and also many more vertices, but we really only need 32. As you can see, this is pretty low poly, and also it won't actually be noticeable in the final render. Press period to focus on it. I think that this is fine. I wonder what this does.
Oh, it makes a truncated cone. Nice. We don't need that. I'm going to go ahead and name this by double tapping tree. Well, so we're going to go into edit mode now, clicking tab just like we did earlier. And actually, before we do that, I'm just going to GZ and move it up just because, you know, trees aren't that short. There's a little pro tip for you guys. Trees, they're not that short. So we can go with this mode where we're only selecting vertices. But since we're basically just going to be moving this bottom down and then scaling it down, bottom down, we actually should probably just use the faces, right? Just so that we can only click one thing instead of, you know, like 4. Actually 32. Very different. So what I'm going to do is, just like we manipulate things in object mode, I'm just going to do the same thing in edit mode by pressing GZ, grab it, and just grab it down on the Z axis. There we go. We got the first part of a tree. Now, how do we do the thing where the tree goes boop, and then it comes in, and then it goes out again? Well, you notice that if we press S and scaled it down, it does this, but it doesn't leave edges here. So what we can do is actually, you can go ahead and press T again, just like where all the sculpting tools were. Now, since we're in edit mode, we have all the editing tools. And we can find this one that's inset faces, or we can press I. That's T. We can press I, and you see, we're insetting faces. Basically what that means is we're just taking the face, we're leaving a bunch of vertices out on the outer ring, and then we're just making a smaller copy of that face in the middle. So I'm just going to basically move my mouse cursor until I get something that I think looks good. That's fine. If you want to fine tune this later, you can press S to scale, and you'll just be able to do that. Now, you may notice that this works. This did exactly what we wanted to. Here, let's zoom in on one tree. All right, that boy right there. Scale up really. That's fine. This is all to your personal taste, your artistic style. So now we need to use another tool to basically pop that out, and then we can scale that later. How do we do that? Well, back in this panel, you have the good old extrude command, or E to extrude, and it's extruding along the normal of the face, which is very nice because that's exactly what we want. And you see, now we're just taking that face and just boop, popping it out. So I'm going to put it to about here and press S and scale it up, and holy cow, we're getting some tree shapes, man. Okay, let's basically rinse and repeat. Inset to a place that you think looks good. E to extrude. Don't press A because you select everything, so select the thing you need again. Scale it up a little bit. Inset one more time. Extrude. Scale. Grab Z. So you see I didn't extrude it far enough, but I could just grab it along the Z axis and move it down, since that was, you know, the direction it was in. So that was fine. That's a little too big. There we go. That's fine. Really, you know, salt to taste, right? You're never going to make the same tree twice unless you write down the numbers, and, you know, because if I wanted to, I could press S and I could just type in like 20 and it would scale exactly 20, as opposed to just using the drag to kind of freehand it. But, you know. Now I'm going to press inset one more time, even though I did already say that the one time was the last time. This is not another like layer of tree. This is actually, that's right, the stump. Not stump, the middle part of a tree. I don't know, I don't remember what that's called. Huh, it's not great. But you see, this trunk. Hey, this trunk is a little bit too big. So we need to kind of scale it down, right? So what we could do is, because if you just scale this thing, it's just going to make it pointy again. We don't really want that. So what we're going to do is select all of these faces and scale all of those down on all of the not Z axes. So let's do that. One way you can do it is by pressing this little button up here. This is the see-through button. And then you can just drag, and now we have that whole thing, right? Another way you can do it is just do that, because then it only selects the things that you, oh, I forgot to, that was dumb. So I forgot shift select those things. Otherwise, it'll keep erasing your previous selection. Anyway, we got that now. So I'm going to press S. That was A. You can also undo selection things. So I'm just going to undo that because it was dumb. I'm going to press S. And you can see it's also scaling the top, the top part. And we don't really want that. So basically, we only want it to scale on the X and Y axes. Now we know if we want it to scale only on X, we just press X. Y, we just, Y, and then Z. So I guess you could scale it down and then scale the Z up, but that sounds bad, so we're not going to do that. Instead, what we're going to do is press S and then Shift Z, meaning that we're scaling on everything that's not the Z axis until we get to about a place that we want. Press tab to go out of edit mode and look, and boy, oh boy, that's a tree. I think it's good. We can come back and change it later if you want, but I don't think I do. So I'm going to press GZ, basically just move it down, move it out of the way, because when we turn back on our previous stuff, it'll just be stabbing through the ground. We don't want that. What I'm going to do instead is go ahead and select on this thing, and we're going to finally make our very first particle system. Hair is considered a particle system, so we're going to go down to the particle tab. Looks like all the cool stuff. I'm going to press plus, and we're going to add a brand new particle system. We can name it some stuff, but since we're only going to have one particle system, let's not. Now you could choose that as an emitter, but then what happens is this, and I don't know what kind of landscapes you're familiar with, but most of mine don't spawn trees and have them fall to the ground. What I was doing there is spacebar to play the thing, and to go back to the first frame, it's shift left arrow. So I'm going to go on this, and I'm going to click hair instead, and boy oh boy, that looks like just about what we want, right? If you click play, nothing happens because it's hair. There's no dynamics or anything attached to it right now. We're going to go ahead and click advanced because we're professionals, and now you get a bunch of settings. So the first one that we're going to just kind of play with, hair length. Actually, the first one we're going to play with is we're going to make these trees. These aren't trees. These are hair. How do we get it so that it looks like trees? Well, I'm going to go ahead and not click viewport display because that's not the right place. I'm going to click render, and right where it says render as path, we're going to go with object instead, so that instead of a path, whatever that little hair thing was, we're instead going to have an object. And now they're all gone. What happened? How do we get back to that? What we're going to do is go down to this instance object and go ahead and select tree, or you can click the little eyedropper and boop, and whoa, that's not what we want. I mean, unless if you're making like a landslide or tree armor or something like that, this is pretty cool. Because yeah, you could just go ahead and mess around with that, but it's not really what we're looking for today. So what we're going to do is click object rotation and rotate this until it's right. Oh, I forgot. Crap, we gotta do something else first, guys. I was getting ahead of myself. Basically, we're gonna tab back into edit mode, and I'm gonna select this bottom face. Because right now, you see this little dot right here? That's the object's origin. Meaning that when we rotate it, it rotates about that as its pivot point. We don't really want that, because how many trees have you seen fall over like this? None. They always fall over like that. I know that wasn't very descriptive, but you'll see what's going on. So we want to make this the pivot point, and we can do that with the 3D cursor moving towards there. So you see this little dude? That's the 3D cursor. We can move it around and do whatever with it. And right now I have this face selected, and I'm going to press Shift S and go cursor to selected. Now you see, bam, it moved all the way down here. That's exactly what we want, because now we can tab out of edit mode, click on object, select origin, and origin to 3D cursor, and whoa, look at that. It's down here now. So when we rotate it, it rotates like a tree and not like an inverse tree. Anyway, little short thing that'll just make this a little easier. Now you see the trees look really nothing changed for them. So we're just going to rotate it, and you see kind of about the way that we should do this is by rotating it along the y-axis 90 degrees. That's 96. There's 90. Cool. So I think we nailed it, except, well, trees don't really roll like that, right? I mean, they don't grow like that. They can fall like that, but they don't roll like that. So what we're going to do, instead of getting all the trees kind of pushed together, you see in the reference image, everything's kind of pointed straight up. So what we're going to do is go down here, click on rotation in the particle setting for that. And on the rotation axis where it says velocity in here, velocity is basically just the normal of the surface, right? So instead what we're going to do is click on that and choose global Z. This means that you see all of them, they're now all pointed straight up, even along these slopes. So they're no longer pointed at the normal to the surface, they're just always pointed in the Z. Now, trees don't always roll like that, you know? We got to get a little bit of variation on there, and that's what the randomize does. You can basically just kind of click on this and drag. We just want this to be very subtle because this is kind of an abstract render, you know. And we're not making a real life forest unless you know a forest that looks that cool, in which case let me know because I would love to go there. And we're kind of looking and it's pretty good. If we think it looks good, but you know, we just kind of want to change it a little bit, we can change the random seed, which all you math friends out there you'll know what that means. And we got this kind of cool. You see, it's following along pretty well, I think, actually. Yeah, pretty good. So basically what we're going to do is click on this one. We're going to add a particle system here, and then we're just going to change it to that particle setting system that we just had. You see, that little 2 indicates that there are 2 users of that data. Do the same thing for the big one in the back. And boom. Pretty good. We don't want the same thing duplicated again, so we're going to go ahead and change the random seed for both of these. I'm going to make this one 3, and we'll make this one, nope, we don't want to keyframe it. Don't. You could get some cool effects that way, but not today. Yeah, good. Pretty good. I think the trees need to be a little bit bigger though, so what I'm going to do is go click on hair length, and I'm going to increase it. Now, one other thing that I forgot that we should do is have them kind of, because it's not fully tiered, right? Because then you kind of get a little bit of stuff. So we basically just want to go like that. Now, how do we do that? Well, you can go in and sculpt it a little bit more. That works. But since the particles are attached to the global Z and not the normal, we can actually just rotate it along the x-axis ever so subtly. Do that for every single one of them at a little bit of a different angle because, you know, we're cool. And just make them bigger. That's a lot of trees. Let's see. It's pretty good. What do you guys think? I think it's pretty cool. So let's do a little test render of this just to see what happens. So I'm going to go ahead and click F12. So just nothing set up right now. And oh my God, it looks so beautiful. It looks just like we wanted it to, right? Not quite. Not quite. Yeah, not great. So what we're going to do is fix it. Now, usually what you do in a scene like this is you would load in something like an HDRI, set up all the lighting, set up all the materials for these, but there's actually a pretty cool trick that we can do to get this look without doing any other work inside the shading tab. Instead, we're just going to go over to compositing. But first, go ahead to this little, to this thing, to the, what's this called? It's like passes and stuff, view layer properties. Now, we're going to, oh, that's right. We're in Eevee, we're not in cycles. So anyway, we're going to switch to cycles by going up to this little back of the camera, clicking on the thing that said EV, changing it to cycles. And then if you have a GPU, you're going to want to change that to GPU compute. And the settings that I find best for GPU compute that I always set up every time myself with my GTX 950M. Not very strong, but hey, it helps. So that's just what we're going to go with. We're going to change the tile size to about 256 pixels and the render to 32 samples because we don't actually need high render quality right now because we're doing something very simple. Now, we're going to go back down to the passes menu and see we have a whole bunch more options. That's because cycles more support because it's been around for much longer than the new EV, which just came out in 2.8. And basically, we are just going to get a depth pass is already included. Silly me. So I'm going to go over to the compositing window. It's over here on the top. We're just going to click on Use Nodes. And whoa, if you've never seen nodes before, this is some crazy stuff. Basically, I'm just going to add what is known as a viewer node. And I'm going to grab this little thing that says depth and plug it into the image. And wow, it's beautiful. Basically, what the depth does is for every pixel, it gets the information about how far away that pixel is from the camera. And right now, it's all a little bit too far. So data for colors is between 0 and 1, generally, for this sort of Blender setup. The depth goes from like 1 to 76 or whatever, because however far it is. And then for the world background, it's at like infinity. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a math node. Get it? Math joke? And I'm going to set this to multiply, and I'm going to set this to a little number, 0.1. You see, we're starting to get a little bit of data back. 0.05. Binary search style, 0.01. Okay, we're close. We're getting there. Oh, that was not it. 0.01. 0.005. Oh, 0.001. Okay, that's closer. Now, what we're going to do is add something known as a color ramp. Now, what the color ramp does is it basically takes all of those values and it assigns them to stuff. So you see, that's kind of how the color ramp rolls. And we can use the color ramp to colorize what's going on. I'm actually going to set this 0.005 just so we can get a little bit more control. Let's see if I can get this. There we go. That's looking like what we want, isn't it? I'm going to connect this to the composite. There we go. Just so we can look at it. And the big thing, boom. That's pretty good, right? Yeah. Yeah, I'd say that's starting to look a little bit like it. You see we got a little like misty action going on here. We're getting there. We're going to fine tune it a little bit later. But so now how do we work with this? Oh yeah, that looks good. If you want to zoom out from the viewer, you don't unclick use alpha. You're going to go ahead to the view tab. If that's not available, just press N, open it up, and zoom out. There's a keyboard shortcut for that, but I don't actually remember it. So moving on. What we are going to do is add another color ramp. We can Shift D to duplicate that, and it looks bad. So we're going to undo. We're just going to move that down. So it's just, when it's like this, it does nothing, basically. We're going to set this to constant. So what that does is anything over a certain threshold will be one color. Anything under that threshold will be a different color. See, that's kind of look we're going for. So one short drink break and jump cut later, we're back. So what we were doing is just playing around with this thing, right? See, once we get to a certain point, it starts cutting off the stuff. But to be honest, that point it's a little too close. You see how close these dudes are? So I'm just going to set this back to, not constant. I'm just going to set this back, to linear. And I'm just going to move it. See how cool that looks? That's what we're going for. But in order to do that, we need to basically add a little bit more contrast. There we go. That's fine. Now if we switch back to constant, you notice that we start biting into it at a higher threshold. That's what we want. What we're going to do here is I'm going to click on this little thing. Nope, no, I'm not. Dang it. I accidentally did. I'm going to go like that. We're going to make this not the UV editor. My goodness. We're going to make that the image editor. And we're going to find our image just so we can start pulling colors from there. Now let's see. Constant, still a little close, you know? But if we set it to linear, you'll notice it's much better. So then we're going to go with it. So this bottommost color, we're going to set to that dark blue. You can use any colors you want, but I'm just a fan of that blue, man. Just a big fan. Next, we're going to go ahead and this one, and I want to make this that deep, luscious red. It's not the one that I was trying to click. I was thinking more, this is the in-between, between the blue and this red color. Really, there are 3 colors, one generally for each tier. You see, that's better. We're going to click on that one. We're going to add another color for this pink at the highlights, and then we're going to add one more. I'm doing that by control and then clicking on this color ramp. You see boop, boop, boop. Get back there. And then this last one, I'm going to set to white. I just did that by messing around with the saturation and stuff. So you see, we're kind of getting it. A little bit. Not totally there, but we're close. There we go. Gotta start bringing it in more. And one of the things with linear is that it just looks kind of bad. Close. But we're going to change this linear to B-spline. It's a little smoother, basically. And now you see we kind of have that purple there. We don't want the purple there. We want blue. If you want the purple there, you can. However, I don't. So with B-spline, you always have to move this last thing a little bit away from the edge. Otherwise, it doesn't B-spline. It just kind of ignores it. Drag that back in. I'm going to drag this a little bit out here and put the white a little bit back. Basically, the white mainly controls what the background is. You'll notice because the background is all the way in the corner. It is as bright as you can get. Now, this is pretty good. Nope, that's OBS. Oh. Okay, so you notice it doesn't show up in our composite. Our composite still looks like something else, and that's because it's connected there and not here. So you see it updated? There we go. It's not looking too bad, is it? I feel like there are too many trees, and they are not big enough. So let's change that. That's a nice thing about this is that instead of placing the trees everywhere is that, you know, we actually can change them. So we're going to go back to the particle settings, going to increase how big those trees are. We want to make them big trees. And we also want to change this. Let's try 500, half the trees. See if that works. So F12. So you see it cycles renders in tiles while Eevee is a real-time renderer, so it just does all at once. And it's also much faster. Cycles is slower because it's ray traced, but you get more accurate light balances, things like, you don't have to do things in passes. It just comes with the physical basis of the rendering. But Eevee's nice because it takes so much less time and it still looks good. Also, Bloom is great. If you've never worked with Bloom before, you should try it. It's fun. We're not going to use Bloom here, mostly because we're using cycles, you know. Oh, man. Gotta say. Huh. What do you guys think? I think we're getting there. Zoom. Why is this one so much bigger? Oh, I rendered at 4K. But basically, it's not bad. I think there's The saturation all the way at the end is a little bit higher. So I'm going to go back into compositing. I'm going to basically pull this out a little bit, and I'm going to select this, and I'm just going to increase the saturation in the HSL. Increase the saturation, increase the value. And if we move that, it's not bad. I did a little bit more advanced shading on the other one, but we're just going to kind of hippity hop over that. So what I did is I got additional shading to get that kind of look where how the trees are like white on their outside and darker towards the middle. It really only shows up in the outermost ones, but not bad. Not bad at all. I think I might change this color to more of a that color. Yeah, that didn't work. But I gotta say, not bad. I think we need a little bit more red. You can also get that by altering the hue value. Say, I think that's pretty good. Now, one thing you may notice is that there's this massive area underneath that is not there in the original image. That's just black. This is not. Also, the white is a little bit too white. I'm just gonna sink that down a little bit. And we'll do something a little extra to add a little bit of grain to it later, because this is very not grainy. Also, I think we need a little bit of, look, that gap just ain't great. Let's go back to layout, and we're just gonna mess around with it. You know, that gap probably won't be there on yours because you know everything. Everyone has a different random seed thing. There we go. That's good. We can also just go ahead and scale it on the y-axis, increase it, and then that'll help even some things out. And also, if we wanted to, the last one, we can make it 600 trees. We can just add more trees to it. More and more trees, so that it's denser in the background than it is in the foreground. It's something interesting. I think it's kind of cool. I'm not going to keyframe it because that'd be dumb. Not dumb, be cool, but not really for what we're going for here. I think that's pretty good. Let's try one more render just so we can get the idea going. Boom. Oh man, that looks just like the other one did, I think. Yeah. You can play around with the colors a little bit more, get a little bit of saturation. I think there might be a little bit more red needed in the background. But hey, this is where the art comes in. So far, we've just been doing the technical. Not bad. I don't want to get it too orange. I think we'll stick with that. That should be good. Now, we're going to do a couple of other things. The first of which is get rid of that stupid thing that you can see. Like, look at that. Look at that. You can see right under that. We don't want that. So there are a couple ways to do this. I did it a different way the first time that I'm going to do now, because this way is simpler. I'm going to add a plane, and you see it defaults to our 3D cursor. If you remember, when we centered out the camera earlier, you can press Alt-G to clear out its position. We're going to rotate it along the x-axis by pressing RX90 and grab it with the y-axis, move it to the front. Cool. We're going to tab into edit mode. We're just going to subdivide it. That was a waste of everyone's time. 20 subdivisions. We're going to scale this along the x-axis so that it increases. Grab it, move it down, and well, basically, that's actually all you need to do. What I was going to originally do is select these vertices, go into proportional editing, and move them down. I also don't have but really, you don't actually have to do that. That's fine. You basically just get a plane and put it in front. You see the bounds of the camera are now covered by that. So if we went ahead and rendered it, you would notice that it's not there anymore, which is good. That's what we want. Perfect. Now we're going to add one more thing, and this is what gives it that final look of realism, even though this thing is not real. What we're going to do is come down to the textures menu. That's what this little checkerboard means. And we're going to click New Texture. I'm going to make this a noise texture, not a distorted noise texture, mind you, just a noise texture. And I'm going to name it something like film grain. If you have actual film grain, you can use it. However, I don't really feel like it, so I'm just going to use this texture. Back in our compositing workspace, we're going to press Shift-A and add in a texture. You notice we can go down here and click film grain. If we plug this into the viewer, you see, whoa, perfect. Look, it's so real. What we're going to do is add a color ramp, and we're going to take this bottom value and make it sort of gray. And the top value will be pure white. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use something called multiplication of colors. And what that basically means is it's just going to take the white value and that'll determine how bright the final thing is. It's more complicated than that, but for a simple thing, basically wherever it's pure white, it's going to be 100%. I don't know why I'm pointing. Wherever it's pure white, it's going to be 100% this. Wherever it's pure black, it's going to be 100% black. Boop, boop. And you'll see, right now we have set to mix. By the way, I pressed Shift-A and added a mix node. Forgot to mention that, my bad. But now we can change that to multiply and, ooh, hoo-hoo, you see that? It adds a little bit of texture to it. You change the factor, it goes back to nothing. We're just going to increase the factor just so that it's not noticeable if you're not looking for it, but subconsciously you'll still know it's there because it'll add a little bit of extra realism. Now, of course, if you go too far, it'll look bad. Let's check on the big screen. How's it looking? Not bad. I'd say, look, you can actually see it in the highlights. You see those little fireflies? Usually you want to try to avoid that, and that's what denoising is for. However, I think it works really well in this because this is such an abstract render that it doesn't kind of fit for it to not have that kind of pop, that kind of like a little bit of, it's like a surface imperfection, but it's for, this. Now, one thing that I think would be kind of cool is if we made it a little bit more saturated, because you see the one on the right, it's very glowy, not really glowy, but it's got some stuff. It's more saturated. The colors are more vibrant. Not the same thing, by the way, but you get it. Lightroom users, shout out. I'm just gonna set this to like 1.1, and all of a sudden, yeah, it's looking a little bit better, looking a little bit more lifelike. And I think this might just be where we call it. There's also one little patch. There's one patch in here where it's cut out or something like that. So something was bugging me about it. So I'm just going to go ahead and change the seed until it seems fine. I keep clicking the keyframe. I guess that's just the universe telling me that I should use that more. Anyway, we're going to press F12 to render it and see how this turns out. Now, if you don't have a GPU, or if your GPU is lower tier than a 950M, which you basically are going to have it take a little bit longer to render, but this isn't a very complicated scene. You could render this in EV2, but I think just the cycles way with the depth information, it feels a little bit different. I don't think it actually is, but basically I just kind of like using cycles because now you guys get an overview of both render engines. Since we're not using any actual information from this, I was back in the other way when I added a little bit of extra pizzazz, but oh man. One thing, I think the camera's a little bit too far down. Okay, so I guess I lied. Not a final render. I'm just gonna GZ, move it up, get a little bit more of that look to it, that minimalism, that negative space. But basically, this is how you do it. So, what we did, just a quick recap while this is rendering, won't take very long, 38 seconds. All right, I think this looks pretty good. I think it's pretty similar to the way it looked originally, and yeah, I think we nailed it, guys. this gap, man. There's a gap there that annoys me. Hold on, I'm gonna fix it. While I describe what we did so far. Just change the seed until it works. And there's they intersect with each other, but it's fine because no one noticed. But what we did is we modeled a floor plane. We sculpted it so it's kind of in a little bit of a parabolic bowl-ish shape, but only in one dimension. Then we took that, we copied it 3 times to make that 3-tiered structure. Then we sculpted a tree. No, we didn't sculpt a tree. We modeled a tree, obviously. Got a little bit of an overview of edit mode. Then what we did is assign that to a hair particle system, rendered it out, and then used the depth information plugged into a multiply node to scale it down, then into a color ramp, and then finally into another color ramp that colorized it, and then we had it. Then we're done. Okay, so there's still these gosh darn trees in the front, man. They're really, really bugging me. Let's add a little bit of random scale to all of these, and then scale them not that much up. Let's play with the hair length instead of the scale. That's fine. Let's try it. Let's try it one more time. See if that little randomness helped anything. Maybe not. Probably not. But hey, we tried. And so yeah, we used the depth information. Then I added a film grain texture that was just a usual noise texture plugged into a multiply node, and we multiplied it out, changed the factor until it looked tasteful, and then we got a pretty cool final product. Not bad. I think we did pretty well here today. We're waiting. Well, boom. Nailed it. Yeah, I think that'll do. It's cool. It's a cool background. This is my background. If you want to save this, which, I'm sure you probably do, you're going to go ahead and go to Image and then click Save As, and then just save it as wherever you want. You can save it as random thing. If you want to change the color settings, you can go to the Render tab, scroll all the way to the bottom to Colors Management, and then change things like from Filmic to Standard, or add a little bit of extra contrast, or you can do some more advanced tweaking to get this to the way you wanted to. I did it a little bit more on this one, but since this is more of a beginner tutorial, I think we're about done. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope you enjoy your brand new cool background that you made yourself 100%. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. If you'd like to see any more cool Blender tutorials, I'm always here, always watching, So thank you all for listening to me kick my mic stand just now, and I think I'll see you guys next time. Good luck, and happy tree forest farming thing.